The First Order. C11, Easily Worth Millions. Chapter 11, Easily Worth Millions. Getting 2 basic skill duplication scrolls was extremely useful to Renziasu. He had always thirsted for knowledge. With just one of these scrolls, he could now readily learn an existing skill from someone. As such, Renziasu regarded them as treasures. Although it was used to learn a random skill, and he might end up learning something useless, the advanced firearms proficiency he learned had already given him a sweet taste of things to come. However, what attracted Renziasu to come to explore the palace was not these 2 skill duplication scrolls, but what the palace had mentioned at the end. A side quest. Since it was only a side quest, then it should not be something too important or was something that took a brief amount of time to complete. However, Renziasu clearly heard what the voice from the palace had said at that time: due to the loss of your weapon, a special. So this quest had something to do with a weapon, right? In the long time that Renziasu had been going out into the wilderness, he understood well the importance of having a good weapon. Old Wang once bought a steel knife and wanted to resell it to Renziasu, but Renziasu couldn't afford it even after trying to earn and save money for half a year. In the end, Old Wang sold that knife to a manager at the chemical plant. A factory manager was usually selected by the stronghold from among the refugees to take a leadership role. In a way, they could be considered people who enjoyed the benefits as followers of those in power within the stronghold. At that time, Renziasu thought how great it would be if he could get his hands on a good weapon soon. Then he would not have to lie in the wilderness every day to wait to catch sparrows. It was getting much harder to wait for the birds. It was tormenting him. If he got his hands on a knife, he could totally go out and hunt for some other wild animals such as rabbits, field mice, bamboo rats, etc. Yes, even rabbits were considered wild animals now. Rabbits in the wilderness would not attack humans, but they were very strong and could reach the height of an adult's shins. Renziasu once dug a trap that was about 2 meters deep and a rabbit fell into it. However, when Renziasu approached it, the rabbit hopped straight out of the pit and even kicked him in the head while in midair. Renziasu nearly suffered a brain hemorrhage as a result. Renziasu looked at the leather parchment in the typewriter. Due to the loss of your weapon, a special side quest has been activated. Collect 100 sincere gratitudes to unlock a new weapon. In addition, you can use the gratitudes gained in exchange for items. Renziasu looked bewildered. Why does this side quest feel so weird? Collect gratitudes? And they had to be sincere too? It should be easy for him to collect thanks, but this was made difficult by the fact that they needed to be sincere. Besides, thanks could even be used as currency? More importantly, what kinds of items could it purchase? He continued reading the leather parchment and was astonished to see new words appearing on it from time to time. Gratitude received from Lizio, +1. Renziasu was pleased to know that he had not saved an ingrate. There shouldn't be any mistakes with the palace's judgment. At this moment, he noticed another line of words in fine print on the leather parchment: weapon unlock, 1/100th. Renziasu felt unfortunate. If only he were required to collect negative emotions instead, that would have been great. He knew that he could easily cause the entire townspeople to max out on their negativity for him with no effort at all. But he would have to make do with what the palace needed him to do. Now, Renziasu was looking forward to getting his hands on his future weapon. An item given by the mysterious palace would definitely not be inferior. Renziasu suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Yan Liuyuan. Liuyuan, say thank you to me. Yan Liuyuan was stunned. Bro, don't be like this. You're making me a little scared. What are you scared of? Renziasu snapped. Hurry up and say it. Yan Liuyuan thought for a while and said, thank you for taking care of me all this while. Gratitude received from Yan Liuyuan, +1. Renziasu was overjoyed. Is it this simple? Come on, Thank me a few more times, Renzius said. Yan Liuyuan suddenly felt at a loss for words. Thank you. Renzius was disappointed this time. It looked like he could not keep getting thanked repeatedly. The main focus was still on the gratitude needing to be sincere. He raised his head in dissatisfaction and looked at Yan Liuyuan. You're not being sincere. No, that's not right. Your emotions are not correct, say it again. It's still not right. You have to let your emotions build up. Come. Yes, this is the expression. Try it again, sincerity can work wonders. Try again, put more emotion into the way you say it. Yan Liuyuan nearly collapsed. He said with a dry mouth, Bro, this is your skill? It feels like your skill really takes a toll on the voice. On this very night, Renzius insisted on testing the gratitude system with Yan Liuyuan throughout the night. In the end, he still only received one sincere gratitude from him. But with this gratitude, he now had 2 token coins in total. The token had a heart engraved on it with line of words on the reverse side, a grateful heart, thankful to you for accompanying me in life and giving me the courage to be myself. A grateful heart, thankful for fate. As flowers bloom and wither, I remain appreciative. Renzius smacked his lips, thinking that it flowed well. At this moment, the showroom cabinets in the palace that were originally shrouded in a black mist saw some changes. On the left side of the typewriter, the black mist finally dissipated from one of the cabinets and revealed something within. A vending machine. Renzius was stunned for quite a while. He wondered what its function was since this was the first time he saw it. He hadn't come across something like it before in the outside world, as no such thing existed in the current day. However, he knew what the words on the vending machine said, coin slot. There were no other options on it. Since there was only a coin slot available, he did not need to think further and just inserted a token into it. Clink. The token with a heart engraving was slotted into the machine. Then it started to activate with a rumble. After that, a small bottle about the size of a palm rolled out. Renzius took it out and had a look. The vial was only labeled with the word drug. Come on, you should at least tell me what illness this is for, right? Renzius hesitated for a moment. When he thought about it and opened his eyes, he was holding the vial of medicine in his hand. But when that thought vanished, the vial of medicine disappeared as well. Yan Liuyuan was stunned at the sight. Bro, are you performing magic? Renzius ignored him. He decisively pulled off the cloth bandaging the wound on his hand to reveal an already infected wound. Extravasated blood had surrounded the wound for quite a while now, and interstitial fluid was continuously flowing out. Renzius knew that if he did not apply medicine to it in time, the wound would fester, and he would go down with a fever soon after. When Yan Liuyuan saw this, he immediately stood up and walked out. Renzius pulled him back. What are you doing? I'll go and buy medicine for you, Yan Liuyuan stubbornly said. No need for that. Renzius picked up the vial and swabbed a little bit of the ointment in it with his index finger before applying it carefully onto his wound. This vial of ointment was not large and was even very shallow. It looked like it was probably just enough for 3 dosages. After applying it, Renzius felt a little regretful. The vial was only labeled with the word drug, but what if it turned out to be poisonous? However, his worries did not come to pass. After applying the ointment onto the wound, Renzius immediately felt the initial burning sensation in the wound disappear. The anti-inflammatory medicine given by Zio had been saved since he no longer needed it. Anti-inflammatory medicine must be taken for 3 days straight, while this ointment immediately worked wonders. An anti-inflammatory pill was worth 200 yuan each, and Renzius roughly estimated that if he were to use this vial of ointment in place of the anti-inflammatory medicine, its value would be easily worth millions. Then Renzius spun around and looked at Yan Liuyuan. He firmly demanded, "Help me think. What can I do to quickly gain other people's gratitude?" Chapter 12, A Grateful Heart, Thankful to You. Renzius had a very serious discussion with Yan Liuyuan on what they could do to quickly reap the gratitudes. As he was a very down-to-earth person, once he learned how valuable each of these sincere gratitudes was, he understood that he needed to have them. It was just that Yan Liuyuan felt that Renzius had used the phrase down-to-earth in the wrong sense. "Bro, I think that you can go out and perform some good deeds," Yan Liuyuan said. "Wouldn't that be the most direct method to gain other people's sincere gratitude? For example, you can hand out food to hungry people or give out water to the thirsty." Renzius glared at him. "Am I such a person? If I give them food and water, what would I have left to eat and drink? And what will you have to eat and drink?" Yan Liuyuan said resentfully, "Then, bro, please don't expect to get any sincere gratitude from anyone." "No." Renzius rejected Yan Liuyuan's statement. "There must be other ways." Since a long time ago, Renzius knew that the current era was not kind to humans, or rather, it was also very difficult for humans to treat other humans with true kindness. There was once a beggar in town, and a kind-hearted girl would bring him something to eat every day. But after the girl got married, she no longer sent him any more food. The beggar pursued the girl to her home and asked her why she did not give him food anymore. In the end, he was thrown out by her family as that girl's husband was not as kind as her. Everyone thought that the matter would end there. Some people in town even purposely went to mock the beggar and wanted to see when he would starve to death. But on that very night, the beggar made his way back to where the girl lived and murdered the couple. Renzius always felt that there was a much greater philosophy in life behind these events. But as he was still young back then, he only had a vague understanding that he had to be careful when sleeping at night. The next morning, a hubbub clamored from the streets. Renzius got up and lifted up the curtain door to have a look outside. He was surprised to see the people from the band making their way out of town with an acquaintance next to them. That man was also an experienced hunter in town who was very skilled. He appeared quite happy as he walked beside the band members. It was as though he finally had the opportunity to get to know important people from the stronghold. In fact, many successful people in town also started off this way. It seemed that whoever the important people from the stronghold picked to do their bidding would lead to those people living prosperous lives. And the prosperous life would mean opening a grocery store like Wang Fugi had done. Renzius had once asked Wang Fugi why he always fawned upon those who came out from the stronghold. Surely not everyone in the stronghold were people of importance, right? At that time, Wang Fugi gave a mysterious smile and said, "There are indeed poor and rich people in the stronghold as well, but only the important people are allowed to freely enter or leave the place." Based on what Wang Fugi had said, it would mean that it was also very difficult for the poor to come out from the stronghold. The towering walls did not only stop people outside of the stronghold from getting in. It also stopped those on the inside from getting out. Wang Fugi was also following alongside the band members. As he walked past Renzius, he kept staring at him. Finally, he whispered to him, "You ingrate, I recommended such a wonderful job to you and you rejected it? Do you know something? I heard the band say that they intend to find a capable guide to bring into the stronghold so that they will have someone to guide them whenever there is a need." Renzius was stunned as he did not expect it to be an opportunity like this. If he knew that it would turn out this way, would he still reject the opportunity? Yes, because even though he would be brought into the stronghold, Yan Liuyuan would definitely not be allowed to go in with him. How could he leave Yan Liuyuan on the outside by himself? Yan Liuyuan whispered, "Bro, why don't you talk to those people from the band again? You're much more capable than that old Liu. He always returns home empty-handed from his hunts. Besides, he's never dared to venture too far out of town either." Stop spouting nonsense. Renzius frowned, as it was impossible for him to not regret or feel tempted by the opportunity. However, he had already made his decision. Let's go, I'm sending you to school. When Renzius and Yan Liuyuan reached the school, Zhang Jinglin was already in the classroom cleaning the blackboard. He nearly jumped when he turned around and saw Renzius and Yan Liuyuan standing there. They had very deep and dark circles under their eyes that made them look like ghosts. What happened to the two of you? Zhang Jinglin asked with some uncertainty. Yan Liuyuan tried to explain. My brother insisted on. However, before Yan Liuyuan could finish speaking, Renzius slapped him upside the head and cut him off. Renzius then said, "It's nothing, we just didn't sleep well." Oh? Zhang Jinglin did not try to pry into their private affairs. He asked, "Have you thought about what you'll be teaching for today's lesson? It will be your first day as the substitute teacher." "Yes, I have." Renzius nodded. For most of the day, he would be sitting in the classroom as a student until it was time for the last period in the afternoon, when he would take over as the substitute teacher to teach the survival lesson. When it came time for the last period, Zhang Jinglin started worrying about Renzius not having any experience in teaching, so he sat down in the back row of the class to give him some support. When Renzius walked up to the podium, the class monitor shouted, "All rise." Then, everyone said loudly, "Good afternoon, teacher." To the students, Renzius was a unique presence in class. He was their classmate, the oldest one among them, as well as a well-known person in town. So it was a really refreshing experience for them to have Renzius teach their class. It was at this moment that Renzius suddenly said, "Don't you guys think that it's tough for Mr. Zhang to teach us? We're all allowed to sit down during the lessons, but Mr. Zhang has to stand all day." In such circumstances, how could the students say that it was not tough? As Zhang Jinglin was still around, they could only agree. Then Renzius said, "So shouldn't we be showing our gratitude for Mr. Zhang?" "Yes." The students answered in unison. Yan Liuyuan's expression changed as he cheered madly in his mind. Here it comes. Renzius nodded in satisfaction. Then from now on, there will be no need to say good afternoon, teacher. We will say thank you, teacher, instead. Zhang Jinglin was dumbfounded throughout this, as he did not understand what Renzius was trying to do. "All right, everyone, please sit down. Let's give it a try," Renzius said with a smile. "All rise." "Thank you, teacher," the students said in unison again. However, when Renzius had an internal look at the typewriter in the palace, he was sorely disappointed. None of these little bastards were actually being sincere when thanking their teacher. Was it so difficult to show sincere gratitude to educators these days? This wouldn't do. He had to come up with another way now that his first attempt had failed. However, failure was not something that Renzius was unfamiliar with. Accepting his failures with grace was actually one of his greatest strengths. Renzius heard of a saying once, "Life is no bed of roses." What this means is that most of the time, life doesn't go your way. But even so, wouldn't you still have to continue living? Of course. Chapter 13, This is Reality. After much thinking, Renzius still felt that being a teacher was the easiest way to gain the gratitude of others. However, he had neglected one problem. While he was very eager to learn and was very thirsty for knowledge, it was because he was born into abnormal times that lacked knowledge. This was what caused him to be so hungry to learn. The more one lacked something, the more one desired it. However, the things that he desired were not necessarily the same as what the students desired. The students who could attend school in such an era were mostly from families with a rather good background. All of them were living with the blessings of their parents. These kids had been attending school for several years now, and the most annoying person to them would be their teacher, since he would make them recite from textbooks and give them homework. During students' teenage years, teachers were their mortal enemy most of the time. Even though Renzius was teaching them their favorite survival lesson, the students were far from feeling grateful to him. Renzius thought that perhaps with a few more lessons, the students would finally be grateful to him for teaching them. Usually, the school in town would let out at 4 p.m. Starting from 6 a.m., the stronghold's clock would ring every 2 hours to signal the time. Under normal circumstances, Zhang Jinglin would never prolong his lessons. However, today, in his attempt to gain the gratitude of the students, Renzius was teaching them almost all of his experience in wilderness survival. Once he got started, he continued talking all the way until 5 p.m. As it was late autumn, it started getting dark at 5 p.m. The students stared blankly at him and thought to themselves, this son of a bitch just keeps on fucking going. Even Zhang Jinglin couldn't bear it anymore. He went out to the yard to chop up a cabbage and made dinner. A student who could not stand it any longer, said, "Son of a teacher, if you're not going to end class soon, it'll be dark out, and it won't be safe to be in town." The student was still a little afraid of this person who was well known in town for being ruthless. That was the reason he did not dare to challenge him directly. Renzius was taken aback. He thought, instead of showing your gratitude, you're asking the teacher to end class? However, he understood that safety came first. So when Renzius saw the sky darkening, he could only helplessly wave his hand and say, "Class dismissed." "Thank you, teacher." "Thank you, teacher." The students started swarming out of class. When two of the students thanked Renzius for saying class dismissed, they were truly thankful. If class still didn't get dismissed, it would have become unbearable for them. Renzius suddenly noticed 2 more gratitude tokens appear in the palace and was overjoyed. Like he knew what the students were thanking him for. All he felt was that he'd done a great job teaching them. Renzius thought to himself, looks like my loving efforts have not gone to waste. After such a long lesson, he felt that the students were still actually very grateful to him. Yan Liuan said as he pulled a long face, "Can you stop making the lessons run late?" Before Renzius could say anything, Zhang Jinglin walked in with a bowl of rice that he was eating from. He controlled his tone and said, "Ziasu, I know that you're passionate about teaching, but it's bad to make the class stay behind for such a long time. Also, what if you overextend yourself by working too hard?" Renzius was having none of it. Was he making the class stay behind? No, he was just ensuring that he would earn the sincere gratitude of the students, which in turn meant making money from them. "No," Renzius said righteously, "I'm willing to devote my entire life to the cause of education, so it's fine with me if I have to teach a little longer." Zhang Jinglin coughed, choking at Renzius's words. But when he saw Renzius behaving like that, he did not bother to argue with him. "All right then." The 2 students who thanked him did not even know that by saying "thank you, teacher" they had brought a major disaster upon themselves. A proverb for situations like this went, "Loose lips cause trouble." On the way back, Yan Liuan was sulking and ignoring Renzius. He had originally planned to stroll around town with Renzius after school. But in the end, it wasn't to be. When they passed by a pawnshop at the city gate, Yan Liuan tugged on Renzius's sleeve and pointed at it. Renzius was surprised to see Zio in there. She seemed to be talking to the shopkeeper. Renzius led Yan Liuan a little bit closer. They could hear Zio saying to the shopkeeper, "My pair of earrings are very valuable. Can't you give me a little more for them?" The shopkeeper smiled flippantly at Zio. "Actually, you don't have to pawn it. Why would you have to?" He shut his mouth before he finished talking because he saw Renzius walking towards the pawnshop. Word of last night's incident had already spread all over the town, and everyone knew that Zio was now very close to Renzius. It didn't mean that just because this was a survival of the fittest era, everyone would naturally become more ferocious. In fact, Every era would always have its fair share of weaklings and ruthless people. And most of the time, those who were ruthless would survive better. The shopkeeper was a weakling, and a weakling feared the strong and would only dare to bully the weak. The person that Renzius had killed last night was well known in town as a ruthless person. So Renzius had become the most ruthless of the ruthless. The shopkeeper's gaze became shifty as he pretended to drink some water. He wasn't sure if Renzius had overheard what he had just said. Renzius counted 620 yuan from his pocket and stuffed it into Zio's hand. You don't have to sell your belongings. This is the money for the 3 anti-inflammatory pills that you gave me last night. As Li Zio did not have a source of income now, she had no choice but to fritter away her savings. However, Renzius could not bear to see her in such a miserable state. Li Zio wanted to return the money to Renzius, but he said, I was already planning to use the money to buy some medicine anyway, so you should keep it. It's not that I'm rejecting your kindness, but there's no need for us to be so polite with each other in the future. Li Zio was stunned for a while. What do you mean by that? After Renzius luckily escaped from the wolves last year, he did not mention to anyone how he made it back alive. However, it was a fact that he only survived because of the medicine given by Li Zio. Without the antibiotics and anti-inflammatory pills, he would have been dead long ago. Therefore, what he owed to Li Zio was not just a few pills, but his life. Renzius said to Zio in a serious tone, don't worry. From now on, as long as there's meat for me to eat, I'll make sure there will be soup for you to drink. Yan Liuyuan whispered, Bro, you've said it wrong. Shouldn't all of us be eating meat together? Why, then, has it turned into you eating meat while the rest of us only get soup to drink? Besides, we don't even have any meat at home. Oh. Renzius nodded and put it another way to Zio. From now on, as long as I have soup to drink, there will be bowls for you to wash. Yan Liuyuan was confused. PFFT. The shopkeeper who was taking a sip of water did a spit take from nearby. However, Li Zio did not mind. Alright, I'll wash the bowls and do the laundry for you too. When she said this, she did not consider if there would be enough water to go around for all of them. In any case, she agreed to it. The shopkeeper pouted as he looked at the 3 of them walk out. He turned around and said to his shop assistant, Don't ever provoke him, you hear? Right when the trio stepped out of the shop, they heard someone shout, Doctor, please save my husband. If he dies, our family won't survive. They saw a middle-aged woman kneeling and kowtowing to the town's only doctor in front of the clinic. However, the doctor sneered. If you don't have any money, what makes you think you can see the doctor? If you save him, our whole family will thank you for your great kindness. The woman sobbed. The old doctor was such a benevolent man when he was still around. As his son, you must also be very benevolent. My father's benevolence was his business. Then the doctor turned around and slammed the clinic's door shut. A man was lying beside the woman, his stomach bleeding non-stop. Renzius did not approach them nor be the good Samaritan this time around. In fact, he could tell that the man had already died. He calmly said as he looked on, Liuyuan, remember everything that you've just witnessed. This is reality. Chapter 14, Deception. Dark clouds loomed on the horizon before night fell. The acid rain is coming. Let's hurry back home, Renzius said with an impassive expression. The woman was still crying and shouting, but no one cared about them. The man did not look like he had suffered the injury due to an accident. Renzius could easily tell that it was a knife wound, so he was sure that the man did not accidentally get injured at the factory but was killed in a fight. When they got back to their shack, the acid rain came and went just as quickly. Yan Liuyuan suddenly said as he sat on the bedroll, Bro, you want the sincere gratitudes of other people, right? Being a doctor seems like it's an easy way to gain more gratitude. In the past when the old doctor was still around, Everyone was always very grateful to him. But I don't suggest you become a doctor. First off, it's very easy for a doctor to get stuck in a dilemma. Second, you don't have any medical skills. Renzius turned around and looked at Yan Liuyuan with an expressionless face. Then what the hell are you blathering about? Wait a moment. Renzius suddenly felt that he had missed something. Although he did not have any medical skills, he could learn them. The 2 skill duplication scrolls awarded by his mind palace were still available. By using one of these scrolls, he should be able to learn another person's medical skill, right? At that time, he could start seeing patients, or at least be able to treat Yan Liuyuan or himself if they fell sick or got into accidents. When the old doctor was still around, he would often go out to gather medicinal herbs. Back then, the old doctor had smilingly mentioned to people that even though the beasts were more powerful in the current day, the medicinal herbs had also become more effective. Thus, the old doctor successfully treated many people with his skill in identifying the different types of medicinal herbs and having excellent medical skills. Furthermore, he even sold the medicinal herbs that he gathered at a dirt cheap price. But of course, Renzius was not as kind as the old doctor. He only felt that if he should possess such good medical skills, he could better deal with future emergencies, as well as making money on top of that. Usually, Yan Liuyuan would suffer a cold, headache, or fever as a consequence of making a wish. Even though he did not want Yan Liuyuan to face these side effects, what if they were forced by circumstance? I'm going to be a doctor, Renzius said as his eyes shone with an unwavering determination. Bro, are you alright? Yan Liuyuan was stunned. It's not like you have any medical skills, so please don't cause deaths. Although we don't know how to save people, we shouldn't harm them either. Renzius feigned a slap upside Yan Liuyuan's head. You always have so much to say. When have I ever initiated harm upon others? Renzius was making some calculations. If he became a doctor, he would definitely profit and earn a stable income. As the people in town often got injured, going to the doctor for their injuries had become a necessity. He proceeded with his plan immediately. The next day, Renzius did not go to school when he awoke. After scarfing down 2 bites of black bread, he went and crouched at the clinic store and waited for it to open. In the end, the clinic opened late. Renzius waited until the afternoon, but the clinic still remained closed. In the afternoon, when the stronghold's clock rang to signal that it was 2 p.m., the young doctor leisurely opened the door from the inside and stretched himself under the sun. But before he could stretch his entire body, he was startled by the presence of Renzius, who was crouching at the entrance. Are you here to see the doctor? And did you bring any money? The doctor asked. The doctor did not even bother asking what illness Renzius was suffering from. All he recognized was money. Renzius said with a grin, I'm not here to see the doctor. Please carry on with whatever you were doing. The doctor was dumbfounded. If you're not here to see the doctor, what are you doing squatting at my front door? Renzius silently used one of the skill duplication scrolls in his palace. He saw the skill duplication scroll made from leather parchment spontaneously combust and instantly burn to nothing. One of the target's skills will be randomly copied. Randomly copied target's bragging skill. Do you want to learn it? Renzius was dumbfounded on the spot. Why would I learn bragging? He had almost forgotten that the skill duplication scroll could only randomly copy another person's skill for him to learn. It wasn't something that he had control over. But the problem was, why the fuck would you even have a skill like bragging? Something like this can even be considered a skill? You fucking useless piece of shit. Renzius gave the doctor a dirty stare and felt that the man was an awfully disgusting person. However, since he was here to steal his occupation, he couldn't possibly be beating him up after trying to do so, right? That wouldn't be cool. The doctor felt a little uncomfortable being stared at. Just as he was about to say something, he finally remembered who Renzius was. Renzius never came to his clinic to see him. However, both of them had heard about the other. One of them was the only doctor in town, while the other was a well-known ruthless individual. So it was only natural that they knew about each other. As such, the young doctor was terrified. "What are you trying to do?" the doctor asked meekly. "Are you always bragging when you have nothing to do?" Renzius snapped at him. The young doctor was dumbfounded. What the hell? Renzius did not bother arguing with him. He definitely did not want to learn how to brag since it would be useless even if he learned it. So he could only consider it a waste of a skill duplication scroll. Then he used the second skill duplication scroll. One of the target's skills will be randomly copied. Randomly copied target's deception skill. Do you want to learn it? Learn, my ass. What the hell is this? Renzius glared at the young doctor. You've got quite a lot of messed up skills for someone so young. The young doctor was on the verge of crying. What are you talking about? Don't mind me saying this, but do you like cheating people a lot? Renzius asked. Who've you cheated before? Why don't you tell me about it? Don't you bullshit me. Who have I ever cheated? Renzius was a rational person. After suffering such a heavy loss, he meticulously analyzed his current situation. He certainly needed to learn some medical skills. He was sure that the palace would give him another skill duplication scroll in the future, but he did not know when it would assign him another quest to get them. Hence, Renzius wanted to find out how good his target's medical skill was and whether it would be worth trying to continue learning from him. He asked in his mind, what's the level of that doctor's medical skill? This information can be revealed if it's for a former target that you've attempted to learn from. He has no medical skill. What the fuck? Motherfucker. Renzius wanted to smash the large cauldron that he was carrying right then and there. He had carried the pot with him when he came out this morning. No wonder you're so fucking good at deception. Damn it. So it turns out that you don't have any medical skills at all and have been swindling people all this time? How did the old doctor get such a good-for-nothing son? This guy was utterly relying on the reputation of the old doctor to get by. Since there wasn't a second doctor in town, he had no qualms about swindling others. If his patients managed to survive, then good for them. For those who did not, the people around here were used to death anyway. After all, there were also some patients that the old doctor couldn't save. Moreover, before the old doctor passed on, he left behind a lot of medicinal herbs for his son and even labeled what symptoms each type would treat. All he needed to do was to give a prescription to his patients. Renzius learned a lesson today. If he encountered another such situation in which he was unsuccessful at copying a skill on the first attempt, he would have to make sure that the other party had the skills that he wanted in the first place. ch11-15, promoting your own product. Renzius sulked as he left. He wanted to beat up the young doctor, but his reason was unjustified. After all, he had intended to steal the doc's occupation. He had to become a doctor. Renzius completely agreed with Yan Liuyuan's point of view. The physician profession could very easily obtain the gratitude of others. But how was he going to become a doctor if he did not have any medical skills? After he reached the school, he started racking his brains. Then he remembered the scene when they stepped out of the pawnshop last night. The woman was crying loudly at the door of the clinic while the man was bleeding non-stop. In the end, his heart stopped. Renzius unwittingly looked at the skin between his thumb and index finger. The infected wound had scabbed over today? So that black ointment not only reduces inflammation, it can even quickly heal a wound? Renzius had been wounded before, so he knew a great deal about the healing process of the human body. For example, a wound caused by a sparrow's beak would take at least 7 days to scab over. Wait a minute. Renzius got an idea on how he could become a doctor. If that person at the clinic could become a doctor through deception and bragging, why couldn't he also become a doctor? This was especially true as he had a miracle medicine on him now. Wouldn't it be fine if he just opened a clinic that specialized in knife wounds? He could just stitch up the patient and then apply some black ointment onto it and the job would be done. Back when the old doctor was still alive, he mentioned that he would not do suturing because he did not have the necessary sterilization equipment. If outside bacteria stayed in the body, they could kill the patient, so it would be useless even if he did stitch them up. The old doctor understood this. However, it was different for Renziasu. He did not have to worry about this at all. Thinking of this, Renziasu got an idea. He even thought of how he could make some arrangements for Zio in the future. Zio's plan for the future was to see if she could get some sewing or patching jobs to earn some money to make a living. But Renziasu felt that this would be very difficult for her. If she were to offer this service in the stronghold, there would probably be a lot of customers looking for her. But as everyone in town was poor, they could do their own sewing and patching work at home. Who would want to waste their money on a service like this? Renziasu thought that since she wasn't going to be able to sew clothes, she could sew wounds instead. But he did not know if Zio would faint at the sight of blood. Renziasu even specially went to inquire with the school teacher, Zhang Jinglin. After all, he knew more than most people. Zhang Jinglin looked at Renziasu in surprise. You want to open a clinic that specializes in treating knife wounds? Do you have sutures? Renziasu thought for a while and asked, what's a suture? Zhang Jinglin was dumbfounded. Then do you have anesthetics? What's an anesthetic? Zhang Jinglin was at a loss for words. In this moment, Zhang Jinglin realized that Renziasu was utterly unprepared. Zhang Jinglin patiently said, do you know why the clinic has never thought of doing such procedures when there are so many patients with knife wounds in town? It's not only a problem of bacterial infection. There's also a lack of anesthetics and sutures. I heard that these supplies are desperately needed even within the stronghold. Zhang Jinglin continued, there's also a particular way to administer the anesthetic. If too little is administered, it will be painful for the patient. But if too much of it is administered, the patient will be susceptible to complications. As for the sutures, it's even more difficult. Not only do you have to consider the tensile strength, you also have to consider if its coefficient of friction will allow it to penetrate the tissue of the human body. Oh, so it's like that. Renziasu waved his hand around. That's not a problem. A dying person won't care about the pain. I'll just use threads for sewing clothes to stitch them up. Then what about the sterilization? Zhang Jinglin asked in a startled manner. I have a secret formula for that. Renziasu said. It was just as Renziasu had predicted. Zhang Jinglin was not omniscient. He had some specialized knowledge, but the rest of his knowledge rested at a superficial level. As such, Zhang Jinglin suddenly realized that he did not know how to refute Renziasu. In the end, he gave a wave of his hand. Get ready for your class. The next period will be the survival lesson. Because Renziasu had tasted the sweetness on the first day he taught the class, he decided to prolong the lesson again until night fell before dismissing the class. Some of the students still did not realize the kind of life they were going to live from now on. After school, the students started walking out of the class. When Renziasu noticed that no one thanked him today, he could not help but take the initiative to ask, aren't you guys going to thank your teachers? The students shuddered in fear as they collectively turned around and thanked their teachers. However, Renziasu was utterly disappointed when he took a mental look at the palace. He did not gain even a single gratitude token coin. Zhang Jinglin had already told him that it was quite normal for the students to not understand the teacher's perspective. Renziasu felt that he still had a long way to go. On their way back home that night, Renziasu could see that the lights were on in their shack from a distance away. He hurriedly went over and lifted the curtain door. When he stepped inside, he was surprised to see Zio sitting in their broken chair and sewing their clothes for them. There was even corn porridge and cooked wild vegetables next to her, which she had made for them. They usually left their clothing in the shack since no one would steal them. Even if someone stole the clothes, the thief would have to wear them out someday. Once they did that, they would get recognized. It would be a surprise if Ranziasu did not beat the thief to death. When Zio saw them return, she smiled and said, "Sorry that I came in without your permission. I saw that your clothes were ripped, so I decided to sew them up for you. Quick, eat dinner." Yan Liuyuan reached his hand out, wanting to scoop out some porridge. This meal was considered a luxury in town. Normally, they would only eat black bread or potatoes for their meals. However, Renzius slapped Yan Liuyuan's hand. "Have you thanked Big Sister Zio yet?" Yan Liuyuan still behaved himself in front of Renziasu. "Thank you, Big Sister Zio." Zio quickly said, "Stop hitting Liuyuan. I can spoil him now, but no one will spoil him when he's on his own," Renziasu explained. Then he also said in a serious tone, "Thank you, Big Sister Zio." "You're welcome." Zio smiled and said, "What do you two usually like having for dinner?" Yan Liuyuan said, "We don't usually eat dinner." "How can that do? You're both still growing," Zio said. For some reason, Renzius suddenly felt that Zio should have been their sister all this while. No one would say such words to them in the past. "Big Sister Zio," Renzius asked, "your sewing skills are great. Why don't you come over and help us when our knife wound clinic opens for business?" "A knife wound clinic?" Zio was stunned. "Why do you suddenly want to open a clinic that specializes in knife wounds?" "Because I have a medicinal herb formula for treating knife wounds. It can reduce inflammation and help wounds heal quicker." After Renzius finished, he showed the wound on his hand to her. Zio took a look at it and noticed that Renzius's wound had already formed into a scab. Zio thought for a moment and said, "But there are much fewer fights happening in town these days. In the past, more than 10 people would get injured each day, but only one person gets injured every few days now." This was indeed true. Excluding the person killed by Renziasu and the man at the clinic entrance yesterday, it seemed that there were really no fights happening recently. The cases of night break-ins weren't counted because there wouldn't be any survivors left most of the time. Renzius pondered it for a moment. "Why don't I go and chop some people up?" He quickly shook his head. At the same time, Yan Liuyuan was shocked. "Bro, aren't you being too ruthless? What is this? Promoting your own product?" No, we can't do such things. We mustn't get carried away by our own interests.